Yep, that's right. We have ergative-oblique relations, all right? So remember how in the previous videos back way back, we talked about ergative-oblique relations, because this video is an introduction to ergative-oblique relations in depth, right? We are going to expand and talk about this concept even more in the intermediate series. So this is just one of many more videos to come, possibly, with ergative-oblique relations, and this is something very important that I want to talk to you about, because you will be able to understand what case to use and when a verb comes and you're like, oh, what do I do? How do I conjugate? Well, no, how do I use what case is which case, right? This is just something really tricky to learn sometimes, is the cases, because especially if you're an English native speaker and if English is your first language and you don't speak a language that has cases, this is going to be difficult. Whereas languages that do have cases, you know how funky things can get. But yeah, ergative-oblique relations. And for this video, we're going to talk about the ergative and oblique relations, just a review with the pronouns, just the pronouns that we will review only here. Because this is going to set the foundation for what is going to happen after this video. The first video, or no, not the first video, but the first point we have is, remember that it's only one case only, right? Now, with the three cases that we have, absolutive, ergative, and oblique case, you can only use one of each in one sentence, yeah? You can only use one of each case in one sentence. You can't use two or more cases. It just doesn't make sense, because this ties in with the transitive verbs, right? It ties in with what is being done to what and who and where, and the directions and the flow that's going on, right? We have a sentence, and in the sentence there are different things that are playing a role. So the main things that are happening, though, are the verbs and the pronouns. Those are like the main things happening. And of course your objects, but we'll get into that later. Transitive verbs, though, is something very, very, very important in Cebuano, because this is a foundation for a lot of the conjugations and the cases that happen. And transitive verbs, a lot of things get done to them. And again, you remember how some verbs can be transitive or intransitive at the same time. So transitive verbs, just remember that the verbs that can take so many or just one or many objects, right? We've got transitive verbs, ditransitive verbs, tritransitive verbs, etc., right? But they're all transitive verbs, right? All these are transitive verbs. They can take X amount of objects, and these objects in the next segment right here, the next asterisk, objects in the sentence, right? And what their roles are. These transitive verbs can take objects and what their objects do, what their objects function, what do they play in the sentence, what their roles are in the sentence, how do they function, and what do they tell us, the speaker, the listener, in the sentence, right? And that's why we have markers or case markers, the case markers and other particles that mark how these objects are being cased and marked and functioned and whatever, right? It gets so confusing. But that's why I want to put these three points out here, is because y'all need to start understanding what does what and where and which, and what the roles of each object and verb and everything gets done in the sentence, whether it's what the roles of the objects are being indirectly done, whether how the verbs are being conjugated with the correct affixes, and whether what to use which case and what case, okay? Or which case and which case, more like it. Now, down here is just the review, again, for this video, of our pronouns, right? The pronoun lists in both the ergative and the oblique case. Now, just simple, just very, very simple, we have that. In the ergative case, we have the pronouns nako, nimo, niya, nato, namo, ninyo, nila. Remember that rhythm, right? Nako, nimo, niya, nato, namo, ninyo, nila. So we have those ergative in its very, very, very basic forms, right? In the oblique, our forms are kanako, kanimo, kaniya, kanato, kanamo, kaninyo, kanila, right? So it's pretty much the same as the ergative, but with that ka prefix in it, right? And with that ka prefix in it, makes the whole thing oblique, right? Without the ka, we just have the ergative case, but with the ka, it changes it to the oblique case. Just keep that in mind, okay? So very basic, very basic ergative and very basic oblique. I'm gonna explain the others in a minute. But here in the ergative, right, I wrote down in blue, if you're not colorblind, hopefully you're not colorblind, because I know there's some colorblind people. I wrote down here in blue is ako, imo, iya, ato, amo, inyo, ila. Those are just the very unit of the pronoun. But when we add that na, the letter na in red, please don't be colorblind, but when we add that na in red, it changes the whole basic unit to an ergative pronoun. All right? Easy, easy, easy. Here's where the ergative and the oblique relations overlap, is when these ergative forms can become oblique forms in a way. How do they become oblique forms in a way? Well, instead of affixating it with a ka, like in kanako, kanimo, kaniya, which is all one word, by the way, we can put two words together by keeping the unit, which is ako, imo, iya, nat, and etc., right? The unit plus having that sa, which is a specifier. Remember, the sa and the ang are both specific, right? They express, those particles are specific words or specifier words, right? And because we have a specifier, we need to have a specifier affix at the end, the ha or the a. And that's what I wrote down here in the a or the ha, right? Sa ako a, sa imo ha, sa iya ha, sa ato a, sa amo a, sa inyo ha, sa ila ha. Right? So when we do that to the unit of the ergative pronoun, we change it now to an oblique pronoun. Sa ako a is the same as kanako. Sa imo ha is the same as kanimo, and so on. We changed it, and that's where the overlap with the ergative and the oblique cases can come into play. But remember, even though it's ergative in its unit, and we changed it to an oblique, you still cannot have two oblique forms in one sentence like this, right? So sa ako a, kanako, like you have to choose one or the other. And finally, I'm going to explain the asterisks. For this side with the ergative, right, these are just the short forms. Notice how ako short form is ko, imo is mo, ato is to, and amo is mo. Okay, so we have the four shortened pronoun forms from the ergative side. And notice also how the ergative shortened forms share similarities with the absolutive shortened forms. So do not get those confused. That's why you need to know you need to know what's being done to where and which when a sentence comes into full play, because there's going to be times where you're going to get it confused and you're not going to understand which is what, right? So it's imperative that you know these by heart, everything by heart. But yes, ergative will have ko and mo. Usually the shortened forms, they love to use it, especially with the first and second person singular. Ako, nako and nimo, they love to get shortened to ko and mo, or second person plural, sorry, na mo to mo. They love to get those shortened. They love to use speakers love to shorten it with the first person's, second person singular, and the plural. With this side here, with the last portion, the asterisk here, with the oblique, this one I would be wary about using. When you become more comfortable, you can start using these affix form, not affix forms, but the asterisk forms of the oblique case, the pronouns here that are shortened. So in here, this side with the shortened ergative forms, they're more commonly used in conversations as well. But with this, in the oblique form, the shortened forms of the oblique forms, whether it's sa ako a or kanako or whatever, right? Here in the shortened forms, it's going to be the same as the ergative forms, the nako, nimo, niya, nato. This is why it's going to be confusing, and this is why I would shy away from using the shortened oblique forms until you become more comfortable and fluent and more proficient in mastering the ergative and the oblique forms. Then you can start using this shortened forms for the oblique case. More often though, the shortened form for the oblique case gets used a lot in colloquial speech, in slang speech, in the streets, the streets, the more like uneducated kind of speech, right? They get used a lot. So, that said, master all of these before you master the shortened forms, and then you'll see why. Otherwise, you're just going to confuse yourself, okay? And that's just pretty much the basics of this video, is a review for the ergative-oblique relations, because a lot is going to be coming up the way.